Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about navigating your personality differences to prevent you butting heads.
I wonder if the listeners think that you and I are like the same person or if we're quite different. Just so you all know, and you're going to hear throughout the episode, yes, of course, we have similarities, but we have a lot of differences.
We do. But the funny thing to think about for you listening right now, in the beginning of your relationship, really the differences that you had are what attracted you to your current partner.
You're like, I love how they compliment me. You know, they're just different in this way and that way.
And one that I've said, she, meaning you, is so much more bold and straightforward and it's different than me, and I love that. And she's so decisive. Oh my gosh, I'm so attracted to that. And then sometime in the future, the same things that drew you to them with your differences now are points of tension and the place that you butt heads.
Oh yeah, it's interesting.
So it's such a funny thing that happens, right? So it really does come down to these personality differences and what that might sound like, right? For you now being a few years into the relationship, it now might sound like, well, I want them to talk when I'm ready to talk, or they need to emotionally process at the same time I am and stay in this conversation so that we can resolve it right now.
Or be just as organized.
Communicate in a way that has me feel better. You know what? You need to change your tone. You need to change your attitude. You need to not blame me, right? So you try to change how they communicate. And as you said, with the organization, you really need to be more organized. You need to put things where I want it to go. Or for some, the opposite. You know what? Don't worry about things going in the exact right place.
Be
it's
more
like,
flexible.
let it go.
Yeah.
Yes, be more flexible. And how about getting things done as quickly? You said you were going to get to that.
Or like,
Well, yeah, I did.
why
And
do
I'm
you
going
take
to do that tomorrow.
forever?
It's like, oh, I wanted you to do it right now.
Uh-huh.
You want them to do the task at the speed and at the time that you would do it.
yes.
And, there are so many, honestly, different things. I mean, it could be about personality differences in decision making.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And it could be like around decisions on a family trip versus saving this year or something like that.
Yep, or family or financial decisions or career decisions or parenting decisions, anything.
So now you get into this relationship where it seems like your differences in personality are now a barrier to you having the things the way that you would like them to be. And it's that preference that causes you to butt heads and try to get them to be less like themselves and more like you.
Oh, so many examples in our own lives came to mind. I can't even explain them all.
Part of those were basically our examples.
We will definitely get to some throughout, and I know that we're going to introduce you to a new tool for understanding your personality type. It's not even our tool, so you're actually going to be really excited to hear about this. I'm sure a lot of you haven't. Just to put it out there, it's called Human Design. Don't worry, we're going to get there. But I can remember distinctly going back to maybe at this point we might be living together. And I remember having a conversation with a friend, and I was like, okay, I of course love him so much, but I am so frustrated. He takes so much longer to think through things than me, to get to a place of ready to take action on something. And I remember I was like, oh, I just
because
want
for you
him
it's
to
like
change.
a millisecond.
At least it was even more. I've slowed down. That's been part of my work over the years, has been slowing down more, processing more. And we'll explain that when we get to Human Design. And I feel like over our years together, and especially learning Human Design in this tool, I've actually really come to appreciate the thought and the time that you put into things. And that's why this tool is going to be so helpful for you, is because I now have such a new perspective on these differences, as opposed to your way of operating being a barrier to me and holding me back.
Yeah.
It's now of oh, this actually really serves us in terms of the family and our goals. And actually just bringing in parenting for a second, and then we'll get to the tool. I'm really grateful that Sky will get to see two different types of people, right? She'll get to see our differences and go
Well,
ahead.
and hopefully two different people navigate how to better leverage their differences to be a team.
Exactly. As opposed to make the differences a point of war or fighting. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
it's
your kids are likely going to see two different people. There's no way to get around that. But it's, are you actually coming together as a team? Like an actual sports team, is every player on the team good at the same things? No, like the point guard doesn't need to be good at the same things as the center. And the center doesn't need to be able to shoot threes and like dribble and pass behind his back, right? It's like, no, those come together to be a cohesive team. And that's usually what's happening with this whole dynamic between personality differences. You're more so thinking of yourself and wanting the preferences to be your way rather than noticing what our differences are to leverage them better as a team.
I just have to add on to that. I love the way you said that because it made me realize that again, going back to how it can feel as though the differences are a barrier, like you're stopping me or you're blocking me from having the experience I want, or if only you change this, then this would be better. But if you both are tapping into your strengths and your differences, you actually can see that it's the two of you combined that can take you farther. Like, let's say there are certain goals that you have right now. It's you two operating together that can get you there faster. But again, if you are connected to your strengths, not someone just sitting back and being passive and everything like that. No, we hope this episode has you understand yourselves and each other more to where you're like, oh, I want to tap into my greatness. And then it's our greatness together, even though we're different, that's going to take us farther and get us into the vision and the kind of life and family that we both want.
And honestly, we do these episodes because we either hear it from other couples that we're coaching, or it's something we honestly feel like we want to revisit for ourselves. And we could always get better at this particular thing. You know, we might as well get into it.
Yeah,
right?
let's go
So
in.
you've heard of personality types, and this isn't going to be like a course on human design, but you've heard of like very generalistic personality types, like the red, yellow, blue, green, the action, the nurture, the intellect, or the structure. And I mean, yeah, it's generally a category,
Right.
but human design takes your very basic personality type of characteristics and gives you very detailed look at how you can do a couple of things.
And it's the most resonant one I've ever taken.
so resonant.
Like,
It's so insightful.
oh yeah.
It is like when you read it, you're like, oh my gosh, that's me.
Like, wow, someone just tapped into the way I operate. But also it invites you into getting more into alignment. Because just
For
before we
yourself?
go into, my type was actually a shock to me. I thought I was going to be a different one that we'll explain. And it has helped me actually get better and get into a place of operating in a way that's actually better for me than I was kind of operating just by default because of like survival mechanisms. Yeah.
So let's get into it. Again, it's not going to be a course on human design, but there are 5 types, and the types are really what's called the leadership types. So don't have to necessarily think about who's the leader in your relationship, but that's just how these end up coming out. There's the overall types, but they are categorized as the leadership types. Now there's what's called the manifester, and we're going to give very, very short details of these. Manifester, just think of this as the person that gets things up and running.
They're the idea people a lot of times.
They get the idea, and then they just sort of launch it. Now, in all of humanity, this makes up only 9% of people.
So yeah, a lot less.
So then the second category, which is where this makes up 70% of people, almost. So obviously the large majority of people fall into this, but in this one there's kind of like an extra segment. So this is called the generator. The generator provides the energy to move the process along.
They're like the workers. Like they kind of get things done, right? Like they're like, cool, okay, that's the vision. I'm just going to go and get a bunch of these things done.
Yeah, they're the executors. And there is a small segment called the manifesting generator, about half of the people. We're not going to go into that now. That's much deeper. Then we have the projector. This makes up 20% of all humanity. And the projector guides the process. to see where it's off track.
Yeah, these people are oftentimes like coaches, guides, teachers, people who can help you like just navigate, where you're off track. And they often offer a lot of wisdom, and they're good at kind of seeing people where they are, but where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a small segment of that, not necessarily all teachers, because I'm naturally a teacher, but as you're about to find out, I'm a generator. I'm not a projector. So the last one is reflector, and reflectors make up just 1% of the population. And they really assess whether something is going well or not. And they, without kind of knowing it, reflect back to the quote unquote group where growth is needed. And they are both harder and more enjoyable to be around. It's a small segment, but again, not to go into too much specifics, these are the people that, without knowing this, you either experience them as, I love being around them, or the next time you're around them, you're like, I hated being around them.
They trigger me constantly. Yeah.
That's right. They're either such a joy or they trigger you. And again, a small percent of the population. So that's the categories and what's called the leadership style in a nutshell. And we really want to share with you like why this is so important from our perspective, so you get a sense of how we deal with our personality differences so that we don't butt heads.
Because within these types, it gets really, really specific, you guys. Like, I mean, we won't even have time to explain all the specifics, but it gets into like how you handle emotion. Do you work better with people alone, or you're great with a group? And this is even helpful to put into context, not just in professional life, but personal life. It talks about the way you relate to others, decision making. So we're not even going to be able to give you the full scope. You're going to want to definitely take this. But yeah, let's share some ways that this has helped our relationship.
What we're going to do is we're going to share our type, which again is called the leadership style. We're going to just share our communication strategy, and then what's called the decision-making authority, which you don't need to know specifically. It's just what's your style of communicating, and then what's the best way for you to make decisions.
Yeah.
So, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
So I'm the generator type.
So that's the one that gets things done.
That is the one that executes and gets things done. The one thing I'll say about this first, though, this is a huge part for the generators and for me specifically. Basically, what needs to happen is a generator needs to wake up with full of energy, and throughout the day, we, the generators, actually feel more energy by getting things done. So in one segment is if you feel like you're not making progress, generators are going to feel drained
and
of
not
energy.
Fulfilled. And I've seen that.
Well, wait a second. And so the other part of it is it's not just about doing a bunch of random activities. And this is exactly what I was talking to you about today, because I had a little moment of reacting to you before we went on a walk, and then I, came back and reflected and shared with you. Generators can't just do like a bunch of cleaning the house activities, for example. The activities have to be ones that are fulfilling.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. Generators have to use all of their energy every day towards activities, but the ones that are fulfilling, then the generators go to sleep feeling like I used all of my energy and it was awesome. And then they wake up and they're ready to do it again. And
within the relationship context, that's been really helpful to know, because before having this tool, I would kind of just be like, why do you seem off? Like nothing happened maybe between us, but I just would be like, you don't seem as like happy, or like, where are you, kind of. And then by understanding this tool, I'm like, oh, I get it. And I can tell when you are doing things that are, fulfilling and everything like that, or it gives me context as to, oh, like something's off base from your human design. That's such a perfect example, because where we and you, the listener, could butt heads if you happen to be the same types as we are, is you would then say, like, get it together. Like, where's your energy? Like, where's your joy? What you've actually said to me before. And then where else would that go except for some tension? But now, like you said, the more I realize it and then the more you recognize it, it's, oh, Aaron needs to be doing more activities that are fulfilling. And maybe I've been
just around the house more. Like that's a huge place for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a huge piece. That was really helpful. And then why don't you get to, I would actually like if you would start with the decision making,
Oh, sure.
because that to me is really powerful in the relationship
Well, again, we're not
context.
trying to give you a course on human
Yeah.
design. We're trying to give you how you can use your differences to not butt heads. So then what you're talking about, decision-making authority is how I should be making decisions for myself. And when you think about that, there's many ways, but mine in particular is called gut response.
Okay, and this was very helpful for us because again, like it felt as though it's like, okay, you make decisions at such a different pace than me, right? And sometimes it could be frustrating. However, I also didn't trust you enough and trust like kind of
that's
your decisions in a way, but now understanding that yours is gut, how often now do I ask and I go, well, what does your gut tell you?
That's so true. And you know what? Now that you're saying that, I need to trust my gut response more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share with all of you, without this clarity, there's so many little tweaks because, well, Jocelyn's going to share her type, but Jocelyn is a very assertive, action-oriented person. And that tends to make it seem like you're the same speed with your decisions, but that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
You like to act fast, but we had to shift where you actually had to rely on me and you had to invite me to trust myself in my gut response.
Yep.
Not just go with what you were thinking because you actually have a different decision-making authority. And it's not necessarily about speed.
Right. So for you, the listener, just even start to think of how the two of you make decisions. And by understanding human design, wouldn't it be helpful to understand if your partner's is gut and you can help empower them to trust their gut more, if that's what theirs happens to be?
And let me share just my communication style inside of this because it's very interesting to put this together. My communication style, though, is wait to respond.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It seems like in contrast, how can your decision-making authority be gut response and your communication wait to respond? Well, I can't just start to communicate right off the bat. What I need to do is check in with my gut response, which is going to be a little bit faster, but make sure that I feel like that's the authentic gut response. Don't let my intellect and my mind come in and try to convince me of something different. Then communicate when I feel grounded about the gut response.
Yeah, that's huge. And it even just helped me understand, like even in a family setting, you can like take some time before you respond to people. But then your responses are always really thoughtful and complete, right? But instead of me like rushing you, like communicate, and that's, you know, we have our 4 communication personality types for couples in our book, and that's a really helpful tool for you all to know from the Argument Hangover. But this is a little bit different in the sense that it just helps me understand you even deeper in terms of just with all humans outside of our relationship that, yeah, you take some time to respond.
So let's have you share your type and then do your decision and communication.
So I'm the projector, and so I'm the one that can really see the process and guide the process and see where things are off track. So that's why I'm, you know, a great coach, I guess you could say. And that's a lot of people come to me like, here's what I'm dealing with. And I can be like, hey, I think this is off track. Just make this adjustment here. Now, my decision-making is emotional clarity, which is actually surprising to me because I used to operate very much kind of like gut response, go. But then I would question my decisions sometimes and backtrack and things like that and that was really just because of my upbringing and feeling like I had to operate that way. And so by understanding emotional clarity is really for me to actually take time. They actually say at least 24 hours, I believe is what it is, with some of the bigger decisions. And really
and
sit
that's
with
where
it.
we've butted some heads, like literally before we knew this. Again, because you are like very speed oriented. Now that kind of comes more from a necessity from your past.
Mm-hmm.
And you would also be more assertive in speaking your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that always seemed like, oh, we should go with whatever you say type of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's where we were actually completely backward.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was, your emotional clarity, you need to take time to process the emotion yourself, which was also meant to give me the time to check in with my gut response and then for me to communicate, which then led to your communication style of being wait to be recognized and invited.
Yeah, and this is key because as a projector, I can have insight into people. And I know that some of you are like going to really resonate with this type because...
Or, yes, you have insight, not just into people. Let's
your
get
partner.
it specific. Yes, that's right.
Like, oh,
right.
I can see for Aaron, you know, where he's off, and I can see where
and
he's
you
got...
tend to share that as soon as you think of it.
Or like with people, I sometimes used to almost overly kind of give like
That's
thoughts, feedback, and then I would feel unfulfilled if I didn't feel the partner received it, right? It was like I almost gave feedback without them like really wanting
Appreciating it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, exactly. Both.
Wanting or appreciating. And so now it's like, okay, waiting to be recognized. This is about people kind of being invited to share. And so people, you know, come to me or you open up ready to talk about it.
That's right.
And then you're so much more receptive to it. And so
true.
it's slowed me down to wait for those times where you're more open as opposed to just kind of like slinging some feedback on you anytime.
I don't know why I thought about slinging poo. That's what made me think.
Yeah,
of.
exactly. So while we aren't explaining all of the juicy details, because I mean, it goes into a lot, and there's actually even other decision-making authorities and things like that. So you're going to want to find out what your human design is specifically, and it gets very nuanced, very specific to you. But again, this has been so helpful for us and in being more patient with each other, being more understanding of each other's communication pace and style, the way we make decisions.
About feedback.
When
and be invited.
Even how we handle other relationships, like understanding what friendships and family mean to you, and same with me. You know, we happen to be in business together, so this is, of course, helpful in the way we operate business. But even if you two aren't that way with each other, it can help you operate your home differently, your family, the way that you handle those kind of dynamics, and prevent, you know, we didn't even say this earlier, but prevent some of the power struggles because you're kind of trying to put each other in a position that isn't natural. And when you two are truly aligned with kind of your genius, your human design, I mean, just to put the name out there, not only will you both feel happier, more fulfilled, more in sync, and therefore when we're feeling that, we show up better in our life, but you two are going to just have more empathy and grace and I think appreciate each other more. So go and take your human design quiz. There are different types. So you can actually just type into Google, like, you know, take human design quiz, and there's a bunch. Even different people have kind of like made their own websites and customized it and things like that. So definitely explore it, dive into it, and just in general, think about your personality differences and bring more appreciation to that, right? By understanding that. Lastly, if there is something you're wanting to continue to work through as a couple and you want to take the next step beyond just being a podcast listener, we have loved all of the relationship breakthrough sessions we've been doing recently with couples. That's our private 2-on-2 couples session. And we have a few spots available for August. So go to meetthefreemans.com/coaching and we will get you scheduled, or you will actually get yourself scheduled, but we'll get you on our schedule to have that relationship breakthrough session. We give you a tool to immediately make a difference. So meetthefreemans.com/coaching. And with that, everyone, we love you and can't wait to talk to you on the next episode.